Auch ich möchte Sie herzlich begrüßen im Namen von Amanut, wie Hanno schon gesagt hat, ein Verein zur Förderung jüdischer Kultur. Wir sind ein Mehrspartenhaus ohne Haus und deshalb gehen wir immer wieder Kooperationen ein mit anderen kulturellen Institutionen. Aber ich denke, in der über 70-jährigen Geschichte von Amanut ist es das erste Mal, dass wir eine länderübergreifende Zusammenarbeit eingehen. Ich denke auch, Hanna, es war ein kleines Wagnis, aber es hat sich gelohnt. Und ich freue mich jetzt sehr, dass ich diesen Reigen von literarischen Gesprächen, Lesungen mit Nir Baram beginnen darf. Welcome, Nir Baram, nice that you're here. Nir Baram ist 1976 in Jerusalem geboren, in eine Politikerfamilie. Sowohl sein Großvater als auch sein Vater waren Minister in verschiedenen Regierungen der Arbeiterpartei. Er ist ein sehr erfolgreicher Romancier und viel beachteter, geachteter politischer Kommentator. Inzwischen hat er schon 5 Romane verfasst, 3 davon auf Deutsch übersetzt und sein jüngster Roman erklettert zurzeit gerade die israelischen Bestsellerlisten. 2 der übersetzten Romane spielen in Tel Aviv. Sein erster Purple Love Story ist ein Porträt seiner Generation, einer Generation, die nach dem Mord an Ministerpräsident Rabin desorientiert und auf der Suche nach der wahren Liebe und dem Sinn des Lebens ist. Der andere Roman, Der Wiederträumer, ist ein sprachlich, auch inhaltlich ein sehr gewagtes Unternehmen, das ihm viel Lob eingebracht hat, auch von der älteren Schriftstellergeneration, von A.B. Joshua, von Amos Oz. Es ist eine Art apokalyptische Vision, an deren Ende die Stadt untergeht. Nun, Tel Aviv ist natürlich quick lebendig und Nir Baram ist Ende der 90er Jahre dorthin gezogen. Nir, you were born in Jerusalem and moved end of the 90s to Tel Aviv. And a few weeks ago, the German-speaking readers are speaking. Public could read in the magazine of the Süddeutsche Zeitung, could read a dialogue, a roundtable talk between Palestinian and Israeli intellectuals, and among them was Amira Hass. She's a journalist living in Ramallah, and what she said, I'm quoting her, to the comment. In Tel Aviv, she says, people close their eyes from reality. They want to live a normal life and deny the reality of the apartheid. Tel Aviv feels like a bubble. Then you answer to her that it was just the other way around, that the rest of Israel is a bubble, but Tel Aviv is the only place where life is authentic. Can you elaborate a bit on that quote?
I don't know what is an authentic life. If there is any such thing, I never experienced it. But what I meant is that usually, people try to describe Tel Aviv as the bubble when Israel is real. But I think that in Tel Aviv, for example, if you think about cooperation or connection between Palestinians and Israelis and Jews, it's happening more in Tel Aviv than other places. And also, if you think about political ideas or about people from different ethnic groups that are living together, so Tel Aviv is a better example than other places in Israel. And I think that usually people try to describe Israel through Jerusalem, and the only thing I said that you can describe it as well from Tel Aviv. I mean, I don't think that any city truly represents Israel. Israel is a very complex place, right? But the tendency to describe Tel Aviv as just a bubble and, I don't know, Kfar Saba or Jerusalem or whatever is the real place is just a cliche. As if you want to describe the US, so you say New York is a bubble, but is Missouri describe the whole essence of the US? Not exactly. So this was my only complaint about this tendency.
You say the Israeli reality is very complex. What I wanted to ask you, the origins of your parents is also quite complex. It's very manifold. Your mother has Egyptian Spanish roots, your father Polish Syrian ones. Is that correct? Yes. So may this background be a reason why you joined in 2005 Shlomo Sand, the historian, to write 3 articles in Maariv. And here I want to, what Hannah said about the Jewish state, that you wrote these articles and you pled for a new contrat social in a way, with no ethnic restrictions, that sort of a vision of a state for all the people living in Israel, for a new Israeli identity where it's not necessary to be Jewish.
Well, these articles were a response to a certain discourse that began in Maariv, and the discourse began with a plea of some writer in Maariv, maybe 3, that tried to convince Jewish people not to marry Palestinians, etc. And then I noticed that I talked to my father, so he described marriage between Jewish in the US, between a Jew and a Colombian, as a problem. So I started to understand that there is a problem in the way that the ethnicity of the Jewish people describe itself and comprehend itself without understanding. Because people in Israel, I was in some debate with, and there was some minister in the government, he said, what's the problem? The Jewish has a state, the French has a state, the American has a state, and the German has a state. But there is a huge difference. So I asked him, do you understand the difference between the French state and the German state and the Jewish state? And he didn't. And basically the difference is that I can accept the French culture and became a French, part of the French society, right? I can become part of the German society. But there is no way that one can be a secular Jewish. How can, if, for example, LeBron James, he decided to become a secular Jewish, how can he do it? I am a secular Jewish. I think that Tomer Gardi described himself as a secular Jewish, right? Now, there is no group in the world that there is no way how to enter it. So, and then when I talked about it, so people tell me he should, he should convert to Judaism. But I said this is a religious thing. He wants to be a secular Jew. He doesn't want to be a religious Jew. So they say he can convert himself and then deconvert himself. So I said, look, I don't. So now there is millions of secular Jewish that live in Israel, and there's no way that someone can be part of it. So then we said, so this is the problem with the Jewish democracy. It's a democracy for Jewish. That's it. And the superiority of the Jewish people in Israel, you can see it everywhere. In education, in land, in the lands that the state allocate to other people everywhere. So there is a superiority for Jewish. Inherently, it's a state that the Jews are inherently superior. So you can live in this way. Just know this is not a democracy. And what we say that the only model that we know for democracy is that all the people can be part of the let's say the identity or the culture of the state. You can call it Israeli, you can call it a state of all the citizens, but this is the only democracy that we know. And this article create a lot of criticism and attention because they said that you denied the rights of the Jews for their own state. I take this argument seriously, but the question is, do you want to live in a Jewish ghetto when the Jews are inherently superior, or you want to live in an exclusive society when people can join the society if they want, and if we want them? This is Shlomo Zand, he was my teacher, and then he told me something that I thought about it. He said, look, the Minister for Interior Affairs, he is a secular Jewish. He doesn't believe in God. So now someone comes to him and say, look, I want to be part of the Israeli society. I love Israel, I love Tel Aviv, I love falafel, I love Amos Oz, whatever. And then he said, so you should declare that you believe in this God, that I don't believe in him, in order to be part of the society. So just understand your society, and I, now to be serious, I don't believe in any state when a certain ethnic group are inherently superior. This is the only claim in my article, in this article, and when you talk with young people in Israel, and you see the level of racism against non-Jewish, who they call goyim. Even when they are 13, they call them goyim. They don't know what is goyim, but they know that there is goyim. So you understand that this model is not working, because if the idea was to create an inclusive Jewish state, it didn't happen. So then you should stop and think, do you want this racism to be part of your society, or you don't? And I think that racism against non-Jewish, specifically Palestinians, but not just Palestinians, are the biggest problem of the Israeli state. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's leave the field of politics, go to literature. What I'm interested in, Amar Vedis, your publisher in Israel, you were also an editor for this publishing house, a little bit, yeah, I found some. Freelance, okay. So you probably edited the authors you cherish?
No, I didn't edit authors. I was a non-fiction editor. And one book that I'm very proud of was Jüdisches book. It was about the rights of the Jewish people. He talked about the 67 borders. All the people in Europe always think that this is like the only thing that is important, this two-state solution, blah, blah, blah. And he tried to totally diminish the idea of the 67 border. And it was an extremely important book, and obviously didn't get any response from the Zionist left, because this is the way they handle everything. And this is, by the way, a very good method. If you want to keep something quiet, you should not criticize it. You should just. So I didn't work with any authors. I don't know. I'm not a very good editor.
Okay, but tell us, which are the authors that you cherish, that influenced you, and maybe you just mention the ones that had also an entry, because now we almost are there to begin our reading, that had an entry in this book, Anashim Tovim, Gute Leute.
Well, to talk about writers that I like, it's always just throwing name in the air. I can talk about this book. I think that the major influence about this book was Robert Musil, The Man Without Qualities. When I tried to understand Thomas' character, so I used this book and The Great Gatsby of Scott Fitzgerald, because basically the question that was interesting for me is this idea in both novels, if the masks are changing all the time and hide a real face, or the masks are the only face that you have. And this is, I think, a question in the book that Thomas itself, the whole journey of Thomas in the book is to understand it. Does he have a real face? After all the pretending and the mask and everything he's doing in the book. So this was two books that I was really influenced by. Obviously for the Russian novels, the Russian part in the book, it was like authors, from the 19th century, but also from the 20th century, like Khrams and Shalamov and Platonov, all the Russian classics that I read when I was younger. And basically, I wanted to take the form of the 19th century Russian novels that usually deals with family and transform it to a book that deals with career. This was what I wanted to do. It's like to use in the Russian part, to use the structure, but to totally divert the idea from a family book, like most of the Russian novels, and to take it, and let's say in this book you can hardly see any families, right? It's not about families, and to try to describe in sort of Balzacian way the social, let's say, the idea that people want to change their social status, gain social mobility, and what they're willing to do in order to achieve it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I switch now to German. Sie haben schon gehört, es geht um Thomas. Hat Thomas schon erwähnt. Es sind zwei Protagonisten, Thomas Heiselberg und Alexandra Weisberg. Das Buch ist so aufgebaut, dass die Lebensläufe der beiden Protagonisten in jeweils getrennten Kapiteln beschrieben werden, bevor sie kurz vor dem fulminanten Ende am Vorabend des deutschen Überfalls auf die Sowjetunion dann zusammentreffen. Ansonsten werde ich Ihnen jetzt nichts verraten, damit Sie wie der Leser auf Seite 1 beginnen und sich damit auf ein Abenteuer in die Abgründe der Seele begeben können. Ich habe verstanden, dass Frau Gabriela Bösch die erste Seite jetzt auf Deutsch vorlesen wird. Danach wirst du, Nir Baram, you will read then the first page in Hebrew and then we'll continue with the German text. Thank you so much.